Yeah, and when we think about tabling, it is participating in sometimes other folks' events, but it's also like the resources you give to people within the events you're working on. Uh, as Anna mentioned, though, about collecting the data, the tabling registration might look much more different than it would in other spaces. So like if you do an event, there's a difference between just going to register versus you collecting data with somebody who gets information. There's a lot of like food fairs and different events that happen within the community. Also that it's a very rapid space where people are looking to get some kind of service prize. So they might just need you to sign something just so they can move forward. And what I like to challenge folks is like, what's the most effective way for us not only to get their information, but so we can follow up with them. And also the process of following up with people that we are able to, I'm sorry, in the process of collecting the data, that we're able to follow up with people. So when you do your tabling event, I always tell my organizers that the best tabling event is the one that you weren't there for because you have other leaders who are doing it. So how we're training the community to participate and take some of these events that you can have, you can delegate some of this work into some members of the community who want to give the services. This is a good opportunity for that. Um, in my experience, I've had like in the past, I've had like a box where I put all our tabling and information there. We had tablecloths, flyers, tech in there so people can record data, and then we train people on how to do it, and then people would pick up we've actually had people come into our space, ask if we can give a presentation, and we ended up training them on their presentation, and then they went into the back into their schools or their campuses or the community center, and they did a tabling event, and they collected a lot of the data for us, but also connected with the community because they live near or they participate in the school or campus. So think about the different creative ways where you can do tabling events that can build up new leadership. So it's not just a staff member going there, it's how you get other people to help participate, you giving the information. Because a lot of people might be able to pick up a flyer and take it with them, but if we're honest, most of the time people just end up throwing them away. So like, how do we make sure that the information that we're giving them resonates with them and that they're using it? So sometimes it means pulling in people a little closer, which what I've done in the past. I would shake their hands and talk to them a little bit more, so I can get a really good connection with them. So they can, I know that they are following what I'm saying, and that they can trust me to follow up if they have any questions. Matter of fact, the best folks that I've ever seen done tabling, if you ever gone to a mall and you see those gentlemen with the carts, or they're selling like perfumes or hair supply, those people are amazing at that because they'll make you buy something, even if you're walking by. And some of us like might brush them off, but they're really good at talking to people. And whenever I've learned my best practices from tabling, it's actually watching some of them do their work. I'm like, huh, okay. Like they just pull in people, they're super friendly, they're talking to people. So that way it doesn't feel like something litigious where you're sitting there getting people's information and people are walking by. But they connect with the census, and most importantly, they connect with you and the organization you represent.
Great. Thank you, Scott. So now we're actually going into canvassing with Lucius Miles, our canvas manager. Lucius.
Hi guys, how are you? I'm trying to see where the screen is. Like they said, I am the canvas manager here at Houston in Action, and I will be a resource for you guys surrounding your canvas operations as much as I can as well. We'll be launching our own canvas operation as well here. Sorry, give me 1 second to get back into the right. Here we go. So the image that you should be seeing is a couple doors. And when we think about canvassing, traditional methods of canvassing has always been door-to-door canvassing. That's what most organizations are known for when we think about canvassing. Next slide. But we have to think about canvassing, especially more so now than ever, around the census and other methods. So I'm Baptist. I'm actually a youth minister in the Baptist faith. And I like to think about the different methods of what we consider doors. Our partners at Texas Freedom Network, the Texas Rising program, they've described doors as they want to turn every cell phone for millennials and under 30s into a door. We know that those people that under 30s, especially university students, they move consistently. So looking in a voter file may not be, for address, may not be sufficient enough for us to do canvassing. But more times than not, they keep their same cell phone numbers for long periods of time. And their motto, it's their cell phone that's a door. In the Baptist faith, it may be a message, their heart is the door. And it's getting through that door will be through messaging, through ministry, or through prayers or whatever. And I think, and I crafted this more so toward the homeless population, but within the homeless population, opening up and them telling their stories might be their doorway to you gaining that relationship. So then we're going to think of, as you're doing those things and you're thinking about how you're going to get people to open up their doors, whatever method you use, you want to craft your message, knowing what you want your outcome to be. As we're doing the census work, we know our outcome wants to be is we want to reduce the undercount. So we want to make sure that people are participating in the census. And to get them to converse with you. If it's your organization handing out bag lunches or toiletries as you're engaging in these conversations, it's going to be very important that we impact them, because we're going to be asking them to fill out the census. And a lot of times we think about the census being. Can everybody else hear me? I think that the Houston Action computer crashed. Okay, never mind. When we're thinking about the census, we're reminding people that like making sure you're counted in the census is going to ensure that the city or the county is getting the needed monies to support the effort, or support the local government or services that are provided. These services aren't going to be provided to them tomorrow. So it's extremely important that when we're talking about this, that if we're offering them something, yes, this money is not going to support you tomorrow, but here's some toiletries, or here is a bag lunch or a bottle of water, something to get them to open up about this, open up to you about their story. And then we're thinking about, we want to also think about our partners and who's going to help us in this work. Tent cities are very difficult to canvass simply because they are a transient population. But a lot of times you'll find the same people going to the same services. So if it's the same people that go and have their meals at Loaves and Fish, or the same youth at the Covenant House, you want to make sure that you're connecting with these partners. And I personally believe that your first canvas opportunities would be volunteering at these places and using that resource to talk to those communities, and then filling in the gaps with the people that might not go there for whatever particular services that they require. But definitely using our partners in this work, or in your field of work, where people may coalesce around. And there are just a few things that I found on the fly. So the biggest thing about canvassing is knowing the information that you want to get. Like I said, it's about crafting, knowing your outcomes, so that you're able to craft your message. And you definitely want to know that you're getting people's names, age, their normal traditional ID markers, name, gender, gender identity, race, age. But in the homeless population, you're going to get a description of their residence, of where they stay or where they're at, so that you're able to follow up with them once the census is launched. And you want to make sure that as you're doing that, that if you meet somebody at Loaves and Fish, that you're asking them, oh, when you're not here, what does it look like? Where are you? Where do you normally hang out at, or where are you normally at? What does that look like for you? Somebody might say, hey, when I'm not here or I'm not at the shelter, I'm normally near Willer Metro Station. That's going to be able to make sure that when you're doing your follow-up to actually get people counted, that you're checking people off of your list that you've connected with to make sure that they're counted. Also within the homeless population, I would think that it's very important for us to first ask them permission, but to potentially get a picture of them, so that if you're not the person that's connecting with them to make sure that they're counted in the first round before enumerators, it's that you're able to check off who you communicated with once the system is out. So it's going through like, oh, Alex, I spoke with Alex at Bread of Life. Census is now out. Let's take him off of our board of people that we need to connect with. We have him counted. And if they're not willing to respect their personal space, and if they're not willing to allow you to take a picture, definitely do some observation questions. Height, weight, complexion, race, gender expression. Be as respectful as possible in these. These are internal questions that you would use to later identify somebody during the census count. But be as respectful as possible, because you don't know who's going to get it. And I don't want to volunteer 4 months later going up like, oh, are you Alex? Oh, but no, that's not Alex. Like, that's somebody who's dark skinned, not light skinned, or somebody who gender expression is X and not Y. Like, it's those things that are going to be important as we're dealing with vulnerable communities. And there's 2 ways to effectively canvass. Can somebody mute their speaker or microphone? You can always use a clipboard that's very low tech. If you have an older volunteer population, that might be the most efficient. For the volunteers, that is a heavier lift on the back end, because you have to input that data. If you have if your organization has Minivan, you can set your surveys up in Minivan through your data team and do it that way. I'm sorry. I think the most efficient way, especially within the homeless population, to do this canvassing operation or volunteer canvassing, maybe simply through a Google form. And this is something that I can help and assist people with. And I know that Andy, our data person who uploads data that you guys send him, will appreciate it, because it's almost as real time as possible. But simply having a Google form with a few pages that they click through to allow them to input data and complete survey questions. Even in a Google form, you can have it where when you insert a picture, they can physically use their phone, or if you're providing some type of tablet or technology, to take the picture and insert it that way. I think that the Google form is the best way, because you're able to just simply send out the link to individuals. You can change the Google form link that is provided to a simple bit.ly, so that you're able to just hand it off to volunteers and be like, hey, you can sign in here, and they can input as many responses as they need to. And you're able to see that on the back end, more so than import it into are extremely important, and they're a lot different from paid canvassers. When we have volunteers, I think it's always important that if your organization is able to provide some type of uniform, be it T-shirts or safety vests, that those things that are easily identifiable for whoever's leading the canvas team, so that they can see your volunteers in a crowd or see them from a distance, will be extremely important. And name badges with emergency contact. When I was in Pennsylvania, I had a canvasser who got bit by a dog. And their team lead, and the person who bit the dog, whose dog it was, called the EMT to come, but they didn't know right away who to call on behalf of the canvasser. Luckily, they had a name badge, and they had the organization that they were working for, emergency contact information, as well as emergency contact information and medical allergies or food allergies or whatever you may think is important, so that if anything is happening in the field, that these questions are easily ran up the chain of command and being able to get handled in a timely manner. And if you aren't able to do like a printed name badge, because you, like I said, you're using volunteers and they're in and out, even a hello I'm little sticker with their name on it, those I think are efficient and can be, once again, a Google form. But you're collecting some type of emergency contact from them as well, because you want to make sure that who can make medical decisions for somebody if they become incapacitated. Like I said, I'm Lucius. I'm here to support you guys in whatever Canvas operations that you have. And that is all that I have.
Thank you so much, Lucius. I wanted to open up the space to see if there are any questions from folks. Okay, so if you are an organization that is thinking about doing door-to-door knocking and or reaching out to specific communities like folks experiencing homelessness, we definitely like for us to be in touch, especially with the experience that Lucius brings to the organization, to make sure that we're thinking about all of the different components when you're engaging in canvassing efforts. Thank you again, Lucius. So
Thank you, guys.
Cool. Great. So the next part is to talk about our resources that we have available for you. So we actually have our pledge card that is available for you to utilize in our website. And that is the pledge card that it's in PDF format, and you're able to find it very easily in our website, and you can download it, print it, use it for your outreach. That's the first pledge card that we are putting together, and we hope that obviously it's translated. But again, as the campaign starts, we want you to have all the resources that you can. So this is something that you can use right now for when you are doing outreach with folks.
Yeah, and as Lucius did mention a couple of different methods on interacting with community about collecting data, we're going to get in depth about what data collection looks like through our system in a bit. But many cases, some folks might feel more comfortable or find it a little easier to start their initial conversation with things like a pledge card or a Google form that will have to be transferred and put into our system. But this pledge card is essentially very similar, where you can use it to follow up with people. We've seen a lot of different orgs develop something very, very similar to this, as well. We'll have like their contact information. So you give them their name, email, phone number, address, and zip code. They will give you that information. And there's like a pledge that they will fill out the census, as well that it's okay to contact them. Many organizations have used a card similar to this, where come April 1st, they will be mailed back their card that reminds them that they will be essentially reminding themselves that the census is coming up on April 1st, and that this is a commitment they made.
And the other part that I want to highlight as well is that at the bottom of the pledge card, you also see that we're committed to people's confidentiality. So we'll definitely go into a bit more of detail when we talk about the data system, but know that the information that people provide to you is only going to be seen by Houston in Action and your specific organization. So any questions about the pledge card?
Yeah, Anna, this is Kathy Moore from Echoes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, we have a very strong commitment. We've got a a lot of mixed status families that we serve. The majority of families we serve are. And to that end, we have made a pledge and a board has made a decision that we can't share our families' data and their names and any personal identifying information. And to that end, when I look at this pledge card, it occurs to me that our families aren't going to want to fill something like this out because that, and it's taken us a long time to get the trust of our families. And this might make them distrustful. Does that make sense to you, having a card like this that we're asking them to fill out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. To be honest with you, the same methods don't apply to every single community.
Yeah.
This is just one of the many tools that we want to provide people. So like even just mentioning all these different methods of talking to people that might support your work. What we really want to do is to provide you the different methods that you can do it. And then like you said, you can make the decision of what makes sense to you. This isn't a space to like force anyone to do something that might alienate their own community.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I follow our board mandate and that we are continuing to only provide non-personalized information outside of us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. So, Kathy, I know we have a conversation tomorrow, so we can talk more in detail about that.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to that, Anna. Thank you so much for fielding my question.
Of course, thank you. Anyone else have any questions about this pledge card? Okay.
So, and you know that on our HoustonAction.org/census, you can also get all the information from our toolkit. We're going to try to see if we can load it up all together right now.
No, we can do it over. So if you look at our what we're typing is we're going directly into Houston in Action. And you can go into the website and then actually go into our census. So then you can commit to the count. So this right here takes you to the actual pledge. And then when you type in census, then you will get a sense of all of our resources that are available, both resources that we put together and also resources from national organizations. So again, this will give you a sense of what is available for everyone to use. So wanted to share that with you. Any questions about that? Okay. Great. So then what we wanted to show you also is this worksheet that is available for you. And this worksheet is actually one that we've shared in our community-based subcommittee. So some of you may be aware of it. This is a worksheet that will be utilized in your actually available in your project management software on Basecamp. And so what it does is it's an exercise for you to actually think about when you're doing service provider, or rather communicating with people one-on-one, how to integrate your message into your census message into your conversations. So sometimes you may think, oh, how do I talk to, this lady that comes for SNAP applications about the census? This is also a good way to get a sense of your elevator speech to just, when you're doing tabling. This is also a good resource for that. So what it does is actually, there's at the bottom of the section, it tells you, oh, sorry, I'm going a little fast. It tells you 50 ways that census data is used. So you can look at this sheet and see what are some of the different funding streams that directly impacts the community that you serve. And from them, connect the dots and then integrate it back into how you will talk to people about the census. So one of the recommendations that I have is that if your organization is actively going to be either tabling or hosting events, that you do practices within your own team in terms of what is your elevator pitch sound like? What are some of the messages that you're integrating into them, so that whenever you are out in the community and you're providing this information, that you know exactly when to deliver the message of why it matters. So as opposed, we want it to be as personal as possible. So as opposed to saying, you know, it's your civic duty, or it's, you know, the Constitution mandates it, we all have to do it. More about how does impact people that, you know, go to the libraries, which hopefully is most of us. How does it impact people that use the roads, which is, you know, most of us. So crafting the message to the community that you serve and how it impacts, and then how you are going to input it into the conversation. So that's another resource that we have available for you as well. So any questions about that? So we're running a little bit ahead of time, and I wanted to see if instead of the 5-minute break, we can go directly into our data conversation. Is everyone okay with that? You can say yes, or you can raise your hand.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. So now we are going to be discussing about data and why it matters. So all of us that are in this call are also part of this call because we want to show the collective impact of all the work that you are all doing. One of the key components of this campaign is that, unlike other states that get state funding to do community outreach, we're trying to maximize all of the resources and coordination as much as possible so that we can reach the most amount of people about census, and then obviously getting them to fill out the form. So when we talk about data, we talk about how we're going to show the collective impact. We talk about how do we map resources and how do we know where are the gaps in where we need to go. So this is a very important part of how we are engaging with you all. And we also understand that you may have another data system that you're using, but I want to highlight also that for some of the smaller organizations that are starting the work, this is also for us about capacity building, and for organizations to have access to a data system where they can track the folks that they're engaging with, where they can have a system where they can actually see all of the events that they are hosting, and then ultimately, you know, having everyone learn how to use a system that will talk about what the wonderful work that you're doing. So with that, I'll pass it on again to Oscar.
So the importance of data, and I know that there are many ways to look at this in terms of how we are working with our community. I know many folks here are also looking to get funding through the programs that we have, because it's also a key component of how we track everyone's progress. But for me, the data is not only how do you meet those metrics or those grant proposals, it's how you follow up with the community. So when we think about the reasoning behind why we're collecting data, it is to make sure that we're meeting the goals that set upon us and that we're tracking in the most accurate way. But at the same time, it's also how do we ensure that that data is being used to follow up with the community. I've done a lot of organizing work in the past where I've collected a lot of information from the community, and even in very vulnerable communities, as I talked about earlier today, they're around working with undocumented immigrants. I've been in cases where people are afraid to share any information at all. But often quite the opposite has happened to me as well, where I get people who come to me and they give me all their information without knowing who I am, without knowing any of my background, and it's just because they feel connected to me, which is in one side heartwarming, but in the other side it's very worrisome. So I also have like giving like small like guidelines or coaching or even kind of trainings to the community about who they should or shouldn't give their information to, just so they know that who they're participating with it's a way for them to protect themselves. So I say all this to say that the way we're going to view data right now is definitely through the system, about how we're inputting data into the system. But as you think about how we're inputting it, if you do have any questions at all, let's discuss how we can use this data to benefit you and your organization, or how you plan on following up with people, and if the way you input it makes sense to that as well. So data is essentially how we track the impact that we have in our community. So it's not only about how we are collecting it from people, how we follow up for them with them, and then how we get to move the community together alongside with us. So the first big thing to say is our system that we have, and the reasoning behind this system called Powerbase is that we tried a lot of different systems in collecting data. We've been back and forth, and we ended up with this system to collect data because it helps us keep a lot of the data private for different organizations. So we know that privacy is a big concern, and it's also with legitimate reasons for different organizations. So this systems allows different organizations to input data where other organizations won't be able to view it. It'll only be between HIA and to meet the set metrics, and with the organization who's inputting it. So through a lot of testing different programs, we ended up here. And let me start by saying that I get it in many cases. Inputting data can be tedious, and at the same time, I've never been in a group of people in one room where everybody liked the same data system. In many cases, I've been in a group where everybody did not like the systems. But there isn't a way around this necessarily until we can develop and improve our systems. So this Power-based system that we're gonna go over might change as we move forward based on how people are using it, some input, and then us improving on it. So I ask people's commitment to bear with me as we're going through the process. But at the same time, I do want to encourage confusion. By that, I don't mean that I want you to get confused. I mean that if you get confused, please let us know. If something doesn't make sense, please tell me. I'll be more than happy to repeat myself and figure out the best way to get this knowledge. Now, this PowerPoint will be shared with everybody after this webinar. But at the same time, everyone here should have gotten a Power-based login. This is just as a demo version to how to input and research the data if you want to follow alongside with us. If at all anyone here has not received this, please email Anna and me, and we can follow up post this training to see how we can move forward with yours. I'll pause really quick to see if anyone has a question before we get started. Again, if you have any questions at all, once we get started, feel free to just jump into the conversation. So again, based on many things that we're working on, HIA has principles not just on organizing, but on data too. So our data is independent based building of activities. That means that we are not sharing this data either with the county. This is with the county or any other program would get for us for deliverables is aggregated data, something that just meets the numbers and they can prove that we've talked to people, but we do not intend to share any of this with any government agency. This data will also remain private, as it will not be shared, as I mentioned before, across organizations, unless organizations agree to with a written MOU. And we also want to make sure that the information that we have is accurate, that it's clean, and that that we're able to track each individual who y'all may have encountered with. If there's something that you need or want feedback on, please let us know. You can always email Andy, which is our data person, at data@houstonaction.org, or directly to him to our Andy@houstonaction.org. I'm wondering if anyone had any questions that they need to have, concerns or thoughts through the process that we just went through.
We're sharing a lot of information with you all, and we're very appreciative of you receiving it. But we know that this is a new system, and that Oscar, while he reviewed everything that we think that you'll need to make this system accessible, want to make sure that we're answering any questions that you may have. The other part of the conversation is also what are some of the frequently asked questions. So for that, we created a Power-based frequently asked questions document that you should have had in the invitation of the event. So if you don't know, if you don't have that, please let us know. We're here to help and we're happy to support. So
Anna, this is Kathy Moore. I don't think that was, could you send that out again to all of us, the frequently asked questions?
yes, I can definitely send that. It should have gone in the calendar invite for today, but I'll be sure to send it out